step through, sir?
That's odd.
Empty out your pockets.
Huh.
Are you wearing a watch?
Oh, for goodness sake. Every time I come here.
After a short vacation, Crash is back. And this time, he's ready for just about anything.
I am not comfortable with this. Whoa! Hello!
PlayStation.
What happens when an up-and-coming game developer, after years of false starts in the industry, manages to not only innovate in the burgeoning 3D platformer scene of the mid to late 90s, but also create an instantly iconic unofficial mascot for a spry newcomer in the long-running console wars? You get 1996's Crash Bandicoot, a game that saw not only critical and commercial success, selling nearly 7 million units since its release, but establishing Crash Bandicoot as the new face of Sony's original PlayStation, and cementing Naughty Dog's place among the most treasured development teams Sony had at their disposal. Since Naughty Dog's contract with Universal Interactive covered 2 more games, their next move was obvious. Immediately get to work on a Crash Bandicoot sequel, this time with a development timeline of 13 months and a budget of $2 million, aiming to refine what worked in the first Crash game and fix what didn't work. First things first, good evening, my darling batlings, and welcome to the castle of Arikado Orlok. Tonight I'm analyzing 1997's Crash Bandicoot 2. Cortex Strikes Back, and looking at how it improves on its predecessor's faults, how it elaborates on what the previous game did right, and answering the question of whether or not it holds up 29 years later. And before you ask, I haven't forgotten about that Metal Gear 2 video. I just needed to take a break from it so I didn't get burnt out. Without further ado, let's give a quick synopsis of Crash Bandicoot 2's plot. The story begins where the last one ended, with Cortex falling out of the sky after his defeat at the hands of Crash Bandicoot, with the maniacal scientist crash landing in an abandoned mine greeted by a large power crystal. Immediately upon seeing it, Cortex gets to work on his next evil scheme. A year passes and Cortex, on board his new space station, is informed by new lackey Engine that he not only needs the master crystal he found in the mine, but also 25 slave crystals scattered across Earth, and with no more minions left on Earth, his options seem pretty limited. Cortex has a plan, however, namely, to use Crash to gather the crystals for him. Meanwhile, back down on Earth, Crash and his little sister Coco relax on a beach, and Coco sends Crash to fetch a new laptop battery for her. On his way back, Crash is suddenly teleported away and greeted by a message from Cortex instructing him to collect the 25 power crystals for him, which will prevent the end of the world via some planetary alignment wibbly-wobbly sciencey stuff. Crash, not being the brightest knife in the crayon box, starts gathering crystals for Cortex, along the way fighting troops sent by Cortex's former partner Dr. Nitrous Brio, who Cortex claims was the real mastermind behind all the world domination shenanigans in the first game. During all this, Coco repeatedly hijacks Cortex's signal to warn Crash that Cortex is actually collecting the crystals to power his new Cortex Vortex mind control device on board his space station to brainwash everyone on Earth. Crash eventually gathers all the crystals, defeats Cortex, and, with some persuasion from Brio, gathers all the world's gems to power a laser that destroys the Cortex Vortex once and for all. The plot this time is a tad more involved, but still simple enough to not distract you too much from the gameplay, which was clearly the main focus here. Having Cortex talk with Crash throughout the journey helps keep him in the player's mind, as opposed to Crash 1, where he only appeared at the very beginning and end, leaving much less of an impact on me that time. His constant presence is helped even more by the improved cutscene animations, which are all done in real time as opposed to pre-rendered FMVs, a rarity for the time, and stellar performances by his new voice actor, Clancy Brown, even if he unintentionally slips a bit into the voice he'd use later for Mr. Krabs when Cortex gets angry.
No, Crash! To save the world, I need crystals. Crystals! One more time. They look like this. Crystals, Crash! Go back through one of those doors and bring me crystals!
You may notice that Crash's damsel in distress, Tawna, is MIA, and spoiler alert, she won't make a proper return for a long, long time. According to Naughty Dog co-founder and Crash co-creator Andy Gavin, she simply wasn't worth fighting to keep after the first game. Character designer Charles Zambilis backs this up, stating that Sony Japan wasn't fond of Crash being paired with a super sexualized character, and given that her design was inspired by the likes of Jessica Rabbit and Pamela Anderson, I can see why. To replace her, Naughty Dog and Zambilis concocted a younger sister character to act as Crash's sidekick, which gave us series mainstay Coco. And I have to say, Coco's cuter design and genius-level intellect makes her a great companion and foil to the more goofy and pea-brain Crash than Tawna ever did. But Crash 2 isn't all too focused on its story. There's still a game here to cover, and I think it's safe to say that this is an all-around improvement on the foundation Crash 1 laid. From the moment you gain control of Crash in the prologue stage, you immediately notice that his control is significantly smoother than in his previous outing. Crash 1's controls felt imprecise in a game that demands precise positioning and movement, and jumping felt overly heavy and restricted. Crash 2 refines these aspects with a floatier jump that allows for more mid-air control, as well as more smooth-feeling movement with either the standard D-pad or with analog movement via the DualShock analog controller. I will say, though, that I found Collision to be a bit spotty, however, with more than a few missed jumps that didn't feel like they were entirely my fault. Crash still retains his ability to jump on enemies and spin them away, but new to his arsenal is a series of actions done with either the circle button or the R1 button. Pressing either of these while standing still makes Crash crouch, allowing him to crawl under tight spaces or dodge certain hazards. Pressing the jump button while crouched lets you perform a high jump. Pressing the crouch button while moving makes Crash slide, which can be chained into a long jump. Lastly, pressing the crouch button while mid-air allows Crash to belly flop, which can damage enemies and break certain types of crates. While the crouch on its own doesn't get much use, the high jump, slide, and especially the long jump aren't just required for certain sections. They quickly became some of my go-to moves when I wasn't sure that a regular jump was safe enough to pull off. These new moves, coupled with Crash's improved jump physics in mid-air control, allowed me to occasionally correct my positioning when I overshot a jump across a gap, something that was just simply impossible in Crash 1. Lastly, pressing the triangle button brings up a status bar showing your Wumpa Fruit count, your number of lives, and the total number of boxes you've broken in the current stage. The first two were also shown in the first Crash game, but the new box tally certainly helps with those gem runs, especially since they're now required to get the true ending, which leads into the changes to the core gameplay loop. Reaching the end of a stage isn't enough to complete it anymore. The name of the game this time is Gathering Power Crystals, with each main stage containing one. They're practically impossible to accidentally skip due to their placements in the levels, so you won't be searching high and low for them like you would in other 3D platformers of the era. Instead of a linear world map broken up into a defined sequence of levels and boss fights, Crash 2 now presents you with central hubs in the form of various warp rooms. Each room contains 5 levels, which you can tackle in any order you like, similar to how Mega Man lets you play its levels in any order you want. Completing the 5 levels in a warp room unlocks the passage to the next room, punctuated with a boss fight that ambushes you on the way there. These fights play out like a series of puzzles, with you waiting until the boss exposes their weak point to land a hit, with each subsequent pattern getting progressively more difficult. That being said, I didn't have much trouble with any of these fights, which was a bit underwhelming. While Crash 1's villains acted as capstones to the various themed areas you travel across, each boss here is given their own unique environment that's able to show off their personalities with minimal dialogue. The only oddballs here are the engine fight, where Crash has to pelt the weak points on his mech with Wumpa Fruit by rapidly tapping the square button, and the final fight with Cortex, which features Crash chasing the Mad Doctor through a linear tunnel, trying to score 3 hits before Crash reaches the end, all while dodging hazards. This is the only boss fight to feature the prominently advertised jetpack, which I'll delve more into later. The levels themselves carry on the Crash 1 route of having a set number of themes that are repeated throughout multiple stages, ranging from jungles to rivers to frozen mountains, dank sewers, and high-tech space station factories. There's more visual variety in Crash 2's stage aesthetics than what Crash 1 offered, all while saving on the number of unique assets needed for all the stages and making them each feel unique, whereas most of Crash 1's levels tended to blend into one another. Boxes return as a source of Wumpa Fruit, 1-ups, and protection in the form of Aku Aku masks, along with the returning Bouncy Bard crates, Switch crates, explosive TNT crates, arrow crates that act as destructible springs, and checkpoint crates. New to the lineup are the highly volatile Nitro crates that immediately explode when touched. Nitro detonator crates that, as their name implies, detonate all the Nitro boxes in a stage, and lock crates that can only be broken with a belly flop. These new box types help spice up the moment-to-moment gameplay, and the Nitro crates especially force you to be careful with your positioning and plan your jumps and movements ahead of time. Lastly, the bonus rounds from the first game return, this time via an easy-to-spot question mark platform in every stage rather than the old method of collecting 3 character icons. On the one hand, this means you don't have to scour every inch of a level just for that damn last Tawna icon just to get a bonus round and save your game, but to compensate, you now have to break every box in each stage's bonus round for 100% completion, which I think is a fair trade-off, made better by the fact that you no longer need to reach the end of a stage without dying or reach a Tawna bonus round just to save your progress. Crash 2 massively simplifies the process by having a dedicated save point in every warp room. Ha-la-la-la! Ha-la-la-la. Ha-la-la-la. Yeah, good job. Some levels feature certain gimmicks to add variety to the core gameplay loop. River stages, for example, often feature sections where Crash has to ride on a jetboard, maneuvering past obstacles and catching air off ramps. I found the jetboard segments to be just infrequent enough to feel like a fun pace breaker, and the board has some tight controls that make snaking through the mines and other hazards comfortable. Animal riding levels return in the form of sections where Crash rides on Polar the polar bear cub. These segments don't feel nearly as stiff to control as Crash 1's hog riding levels, and offer new moment-to-moment challenges with the added ability to perform a short dash to either speed up or cover more distance while jumping. Polar is also just an adorable little critter who you can't help but love, and their increased presence makes them feel less jarring than the grand total of 2 hog rides in the first game. Some of the sewer levels feature sections where Crash has to hang from monkey bars on the ceiling, weaving his way past enemies and breaking boxes along the way. These sections are usually brief enough to not slow things down too much, although one section requires you to know that you can crouch while hanging on the monkey bars to dodge under otherwise unavoidable enemies, something that I only found out about while recording this by accident. Levels with advanced darkness returned for a couple of stages, and I found these to be more annoying than anything, as your Aku Aku mask no longer acts as your light source. Instead, you have to touch these fireflies that light the way for you, but only for a set amount of time before they fly away, leaving you potentially stuck with no way to see where you're going. These stages really rely on trial and error more than the rest of the game does, with 2 main exceptions, but we'll get to those in a bit. Finally, the last warp room introduces flying sections with the aforementioned jetpack. I didn't like these at all. The jetpack controls awkwardly, with up and down being reversed like you'd see in a flight sim, X moving you forward and circle moving you backward. I felt like I was fighting my muscle memory the whole time, not helped by how much momentum Crash has in these sections and some unclear depth perception causing me to run into enemies and hazards more often than I'd like. New to Crash 2's core gameplay loop are secret exits found in specific levels, usually hidden in plain sight off somewhere to the side. These take you to a secret 6th warp room, and each exit corresponds to a secret level it unlocks, be it either a new stage entirely or an alternate entrance to a previously found stage. If you break every box you come across in a level and check the counter only to find out that you're missing a comical amount of them still, it probably means you have an alternate entrance to find. The game teases you with the existence of these entrances as early as Stage 2, where you can clearly see the red gem just out of your reach, but if you pay attention, you'll see a hole right above it, hinting that there's some other path that you have to find in order to get to that hole and drop down on the gem. Speaking of gems, the way they're handled has been completely revamped as well. Back in Crash 1, every stage awarded you with a gem for breaking every box and getting to the end without dying once, which was also the main way you'd save your game. Specific stages, usually the hardest ones, gave you a colored gem that would unlock the corresponding alternate pathways in other stages. These clear and colored gems both return in Crash 2, but with significant tweaks. Clear gems are now always given to you for breaking every box, regardless of how many times you died, while colored gems are hidden behind either obscure criteria, like, say, completing Stage 1 without breaking any boxes, the aforementioned alternate Stage 2 entrance, or going through a fake wall blocked by nitro crates. I can appreciate how Naughty Dog toned down the challenge required to get a simple box gem, but at the same time, I'm split on the way colored gems are implemented. I like the secretive nature of them that encourages exploration and out-of-the-box thinking and concept, but in execution, I can't help but wonder how I was supposed to figure some of these out in a time before online walkthroughs. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just meant to boost sales of the official strategy guides games back then always had. The last revamp from Crash 1 is the reward for clearing a level without dying, and unlike how split I was on color gems, this one's much more cut and dry. If you reach a certain point in some levels, you'll see a new platform marked with a skull appear, which will take you to a new death route, usually a more challenging side path that hides an extra gem at the end of it. If you do reach the point a skull platform spawns in, but die any amount of times beforehand, you'll see the outline of where it would normally appear. Something that always mystified me as a kid until I saw Kid Icarus's old video on Crash 2 when I was in college. Hey, I never claimed to be good at video games. Thankfully, these death routes never require you to reach the very end without dying, just a reasonable way throughout the stage, and dying on the death route doesn't lock you out of retrying it. Once you've attempted a death route, you're free to die and try again as many times as you need to. This, right here, this is one of the best improvements Crash 2 makes that isn't tied to its controls, as it reworks a part of the first entry's challenge without scrapping it entirely, which would have been the easier option. It felt like Naughty Dog wanted to make the game easier for kids while also rewarding those who wanted a decent challenge. Now, that's not to say that I'm not without my gripes, though. Remember those two specific sections I said I'd get into later? Well, it's about time we tackled them. Stage 18 features the most dastardly death route in the game by far, a side-scrolling section entirely on ice that's absolutely bukkakied with nitro crates galore. It took me so many deaths and retries to get through this nut punch of a section, what with the spotty collision and how Crash weirdly holds on to a ton of momentum when ice skating against a solid object you'd think would just stop him in his tracks. And to cap it all off, there's literally a stack of metal crates midway through that gives you a nice single deuce. I'm partial to the double deuce myself. The second, and by far most painful part, lies in nabbing Stage 21's box gem, which is so convoluted and requires not only completing a death route, but then backtracking on said death route and going through the stage backwards to break a few more boxes. I had to look up a walkthrough just to make sure I was doing this right, because I just couldn't believe that the folks at Naughty Dog expected such pinpoint precision without a single death just to grab a box gem, and on such a random stage too. Sure, it was the final warp room, but I'd understand such a demanding challenge on maybe the final main stage, not the first one you're likely to go through in there. The footage doesn't lie, Batlings. It took me roughly 16.5 minutes to grab this level's gem. And it's all because the path to do so feels more like something from a Kaizo ROM hack than something I'd actually be expected to do in an otherwise pretty easy game. There's more complaints coming, but they're too minor to warrant their own paragraphs, so step right up, Batlings, and get ready for a segment I like to call the Bitchathon, where I bitch and moan about stuff that bugs me in a game I otherwise like. Why can't I just revisit the secret warp room after I've been to it once? Why does this one bonus round hide a box off screen with no clue that it's there? These Firefly stages are such a pain in the ass since the Fireflies don't stay with you like the Aku Aku lights did in Crash 1. Why can I still move in 3D space into 2D sections? These jetpack controls suck mega dog. Why are the ice physics so bizarre? Why are these shrink rays so hard to dodge? And last but not least, why can't I do the crash dance in real life without hurting my back? This concludes this episode of the Bitchathon. So, to wrap things up, Crash 2 isn't perfect by any means, but it's a perfect example of what a video game sequel should be. It improves on what didn't work in the first game, further refines what already worked, rebalances the off-putting difficulty the first game had without dumbing it down completely, enhances the graphics, sound, controls, and expands on the barely there story of Crash 1 without overcomplicating the narrative with tons of new characters or dramatic shifts in tone. It's no wonder that Crash 2 would go on to be another smash on par with its predecessor, and further cemented Naughty Dog as one of the premier Western developers for Sony's new PlayStation brand, a relationship that continues to this day. But with all that said and done, don't think that I'm done with Crash just yet. There's still one more game I plan on covering as part of this impromptu side tangent for Crash Bandicoot's 30th anniversary, and it's the one I have by far the biggest nostalgia boner for. When I revisit the Crash series next, I'll be looking at not only the game that introduced me to the orange marsupial, but my first experience with home console gaming in general, with Crash Bandicoot Warped. Wait, I said it wrong. Apparently it's actually Crash Bandicoot Warped! Until then, unpleasant dreams.